Hi, guys. Help me welcome Andrew Dewar today. He is a co runner of the 5 Year You Company, and they help transition people into living a life of purpose. So, welcome, Andrew. We're so glad you're here.
Thanks for having me on, Stephanie. I appreciate it. I'm excited for this.
Yes, me too. I have enjoyed listening to a few of your podcasts recently, and one of the things that really kind of resonated with me is the idea of your 60-second rule. So I would love for you to explain that to us a little better.
Sure. The 60-second rule kind of came out of very, very long conversations. My partner and I, we would get fixated on a topic, and I don't know if you've ever had this where you kind of somebody's bugging you or some issue's bugging you, and you start talking about it, and you keep going on it, and it just festers, and you're not really solving the problem. You're just venting about it, and you keep venting and venting and venting without any solutions or anything else, and you just feel worse afterwards. But at the same time, you have this stuck emotion in you, this need to get it out. And what I always found was like, and you see it a lot, you see it in sitcoms, you see it everywhere. Somebody comes home from work, and somebody in the office or at the job or wherever, client, whatever, is really annoying them. So they come home, they complain to their significant other about it, and then the next day it happens again and again and again. And after 10 years, the normal conversation is coming home complaining for an hour or two about this person, place, or thing that your significant other can't help you with. That they're not that person, they can't do it, and they're getting fed up, in not necessarily in like an angry way, but in a way that's like, we're stuck on this. So 60 seconds is, you have an issue come up that could very easily, I won't say ruin your whole day, but it can very easily spiral and take over the conversation and the energy and everything. And you say, okay, 60-second rule, I need to let this out. And it can be, this person cut me off in traffic and they're a jerk and I don't like them and it made me really angry. And this person does this every day when I'm trying to get out of the parking lot. They always cut me off. They never look at me. They never acknowledge it. And it's just really bad. There's my 60 seconds. I'm done. And all the other person has to do is really just hold space for that person as it's coming out. You're not trying to solve anything, but for 60 seconds, and it can be a 5 minute rule, it can be an hour rule if it's a really big topic, but the idea is that you're making it finite. You're not allowing yourself to talk about it over and over again, because it's my experience that most of the time when we're complaining to somebody about something, it's rarely a person that can do anything about it.
So true.
And it's unfortunate, but it's kind of the way it goes, right? You complain to your spouse about your boss, but you don't complain to your boss about your boss or ask your boss to do the changing or anything that you don't like, because that's the hard conversation. So by giving yourself that permission to have 60 seconds, it kind of saves the relationship in a way where you're allowed to let it out. The other person understands what you're doing, and then you're able to just kind of not internalize it, and you let it free. And when it's been my experience that when we don't let out our emotions, when we don't let things go, let them out, they stick inside of us, and when they stick inside of us, it feels worse and worse and worse. So you have to deal with these emotions. It's healthy, it's the appropriate thing, but it doesn't have to become the source of conversation for 10 years. It can just very easily be, my boss is a jerk, moving on.
Yeah.
And it might get to that point, the more you practice that. It's just, you kind of just shrug your shoulders, you let it out, and you move on. And I've even done that for myself on my own too. Like something's bugging me, I might just, scream into a pillow, or like, just do something to get that energy unstuck so that I can move forward with my day. Because it's painful to have to do it, and it takes up space in your brain, which is like, your brain's meant for all these other things. Don't give rent to somebody that's, you don't want in there.
Yeah, I love that. And that last part too especially resonates because it's true. Like, we give up real estate in our brain for lots of thoughts that we really don't need to have in there sometime. We need to take
Oh
them
yeah.
captive and get rid of them. So that's good. I like that. And I heard you say too that whole concept about trapped emotions that, because our thoughts lead to our emotions, so they get trapped in there too. And they can do
Yeah.
so much damage. And I love that idea of releasing that for sure.
Yeah, it was my experience. I spent I joke with people and say I'm very new to feelings. It's only been a couple of years since I discovered there was more feelings than good and bad, and now I got the whole feelings wheel. I know there's a whole bunch more, but I really did not. As growing up, I had some pretty severe trauma as a child, and I just didn't want to feel anything about these emotions. So I put them in a box in my emotional garage, and I said, well, I guess they're boxed up, they're good. And I did that for 30 years, and the effects it has on your body are just they're very painful. Like I couldn't eat anything, nothing was working because I hadn't dealt with that. And when I started to deal with those emotions, when I started to release them and kind of understand the things that had to happen around releasing your energy and your emotions around all this stuff, that's when I started to heal. And I started to heal very quickly because it wasn't a physical problem. It was an emotional thing. Like my body was locked in a state of fight or flight, really.
Yeah. Yeah. We do easily get into that whenever we keep kind of ruminating on those thoughts and feelings for
Absolutely.
sure. I agree. Well, another thing that you refer to as holding space, which is so much of what we coaches do is hold space for other people. But I love that you also said holding space for yourself. Like you allowed yourself that 60 seconds to, if it was screaming a pillow or whatever. But that is
Yeah.
so important because we can forget that. We can get caught up in helping others, especially those of us who are helpers. And then, we realize, wait, we've got to do the same thing. And that's so important to remember.
It is. And again, I'm very new to the whole self care thing because I live my life taking care of everyone else. And that was one of the issues that I had was I was so bad, in fact, that when I was initially working through things, they said like, well, if you're, it's my kids come first. My kids always come first. And they said, well, if you're in an airplane, which one, like you have to put your mask on first. I'm like, no, I put my kid's mask on first. I'm like, but you would die. I'm like, yeah, but my kid would be safe. And, it just like that's how far off I was with this, and not even thinking like if I save myself first, then I can save them more easy because you only have a few seconds with that mask analogy. But it's hard. It's really hard to get out of that space and go, look, you need to take care of you because you're worth it. And one of the things I've been discovering the more I work with people is that most of us don't think we're worthy. And it's really a challenge to do anything for yourself when you have that fundamental hole of unworthiness. And one of the things I do is I help people kind of fill that hole up and just feel worthy within themselves because nobody can give it to you. We all try to get it externally, but that's what 5 Year You is about. It's about discovering, honoring who you are as in your soul and who you're meant to be here, and giving yourself that gift of worthiness so that you can move forward with purpose in your life.
Very, very interesting. So that also goes kind of closely with this idea of when we're looking at our worth, because a lot of times that can be a trauma wound. And
Yes.
oftentimes it comes from a trauma wound. But one of the thoughts that I've heard you say before also, whenever you are engaged with a person and you're having these conversations, and maybe you recognize that, maybe there's a time that you go, I realize this person, they do have an issue with maybe their worth or they have some kind of wounds there. But regardless of what you might pick up on, I think that it comes back to that idea of holding space and sometimes even asking that person, are you looking for my sympathy? Right? I know you have a topic about this that you've covered.
Yes.
Sympathy versus solutions or support. Can
That's
you,
right.
yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So, my partner, Catherine, we've worked together for 6 years now. And very early on in our conversations, she would come with some sort of topic. And because I was emotionally stunted at these times, I just figured like I needed to solve the problem. And so sympathy or solutions kind of came as this question you would ask somebody when they're coming to you with a problem, because I hate to lump us all into the same boat, but here we go. Men typically are solution based, and they're not necessarily super good with emotions, and that's changing bit by bit. But it's a long journey. So when someone comes to you and they're like, "I just need to, I got to do my 60 seconds," they're not asking you to, you know, give me a solution. They're just saying, "Can you just listen to what I'm saying right now, so that I feel heard, and you can just kind of sit with me in this moment. You don't have to solve anything. You don't have to do. In fact, you have the easiest job on the planet right now. You don't have to do anything. You just need to sit, shut up, and listen." Is like really the thing I told myself, is like, and it's true. So often we think we have to solve every problem immediately, and not every problem is meant to be solved. And when somebody comes to you with an emotional problem, often we come at it with a solution based mindset, and they're two different conversations. So when you have that dynamic, when you have somebody coming looking for a sympathy and the other person's giving you a solution, the person seeking sympathy is going to feel like they're not being heard, that they're not understood, that you're not listening. And the solution person is going, "Why aren't you just fixing this? Because I just gave you it, like you go do this and this thing will work, and it's worked for everybody else. So let's do this." And it really just helps to put people on the same page. So as the person, when somebody comes to you with a problem, if you can just take that pause, step outside yourself and go, what are they really asking? Is this like a sympathy and emotional conversation, or is this a result solution based conversation? And you can't go from one towards the other, maybe at some point, but in those moments, people are just wanting to be heard, and being able to address that with your kids, with your spouse, with your coworkers, with whoever it is. When you can see that, it is so much better for you and your relationships, because you're meeting them where they need to be met, not on the next level or the lower level. And you're meeting them and saying, "This is what I hear you, I see you, and this is important to me because it's important to you."
Yes, that's a beautifully explained concept. I really like the words you put with that so much. And
Thank
it
you.
also, it touches on this whole concept of relationships so well, because anytime that we can work on improving our relationships, I think I'm all about trying those things, because in the world we're in, it can be so hard sometimes to have meaningful relationships with people, especially if you have some of these barriers in place. And maybe
Yeah.
you're not hearing them, you're not listening to them, you're not holding space, you're just trying, like you just said, to solve it instead of really hear their heart in it, their emotions in it. And so I think it kind of comes back to this idea too of being willing to be vulnerable with each other in those meaningful relationships. And I know that's something that you have mentioned before as well. So you want to maybe explain that to our viewers just a little bit. I've said it
Yeah.
to my viewers, but it would be great for them to hear it from a male. So go ahead.
So I've learned vulnerability in the last couple of years, and I touched earlier, but when you share your story with someone, when you are willing to show that your imperfections to someone, when you're willing to show your warts, your scars, whatever gross terminology we can come up with right now, it's not actually gross; it's beautiful. And we live in an age where we are, what we call it in 5-year years, living from the outside in, meaning we're living on this outer ring of life where we're trying to do and have things to get acknowledgement and likes and all these reactionary things to make us feel valuable. And when you live on that outer layer, it's very superficial, and a lot of people do, and that's their go around this time. Whatever they are doing, there's no judgment. Everybody is on their own path, and I acknowledge that, and I'm grateful for that. But being vulnerable is when you show that side of yourself that you're almost worried about it. You're like, what will that person think? And I have done this with a lot of people. Often it's met with more vulnerability. It's met back with an openness, a willing to share, a willing to connect. And the odd time it's met with, I don't understand what you're talking about. And that is okay.
Yeah.
It's not everybody is going to be where you hope they would be.
Right.
And that's their journey, not yours. It's been my experience too with this. When I share my story, when I share the pains that I've suffered, when I share things like coming off antidepressants this year and how rough that is and how challenging it is, talking about divorce, talking about all these challenges that I have been through in my life, and not glossing over them with "it's fine," but going, this is really hard. I miss my kids every second I'm not with them, and I know that's the gig as a parent growing up. Even that, it's something every parent shares, and nobody in my world talks about it. But when you open up to the other person, when you say, guess what? I'm not super shiny bright like you see on Instagram.
Right.
Then the other person goes, oh my goodness, thank you so much. I have been like just, tense and propping myself up, trying to be perfect for everyone. And you're not perfect and I'm not perfect. And we can be not perfect together as friends. And that's the other thing. One of our best episodes is making friends as adults because it is hard. And I have found that when I can just be myself, be vulnerable and go, how are you doing? I'm like, pretty good. This is that, and, or, how are you doing? Like, what? I'm really missing my kids today. Or, you know what? I am 3 days into my Monday work week and I'm still not caught up. I just, sometimes things are they're just hard because it's life and and that's the challenge. When you can show your vulnerability to somebody else, you get below these layers. You come from an authentic source of yourself, and people see that, and people are drawn to that.
That's right.
People can go, oh, yeah, this is the kind of person I want to be around. Or they go, oh, I really don't want to be around this person. They talk about real things, and I'm way more about social conversations and how the sports team's doing and the new foods at Costco, and all those things are awesome. I love Costco, but I'm incapable of small talk, and I feel it's a disservice to have a conversation with somebody and waste their time and effectively mine by trying to be something I'm not. So my act of vulnerability is like, it's almost a filtering mechanism. It's kind of like, this is who I am. And some people are, yes, I see you. I want to be like that. Here's what's troubling me. Here's what I'm working on that I really, here's my deepest, darkest, brightest dream, whatever you want, my darkest secret, my brightest dream, whatever it is. And they know that it's going to be accepted because you've taken that act of being vulnerable first. Now, it doesn't mean somebody you meet on the bus stop you spill your guts to the first day. That
Yeah.
generally doesn't work, and we're able to do this on podcasts because this is how we are.
Right.
But the more you it depends on what kind of life you want with somebody. Do you want to have a surface life, which a lot of people do? Or are you looking for more meaning, more sustenance, more oomph in your life, more connection?
Yeah, more connection.
And
That's the word I was thinking. That's so true.
yeah,
That deeper connection. That's what people really want, I think, when
yeah,
they are willing to do that.
I- exactly. And I feel that, I've done quite a few interviews this year, and I feel closer to the people in these interviews than some of the people who I've known for 20 years because they're willing to listen and then they're willing to share. And there's this exchange that happens where you're more connected than maybe that person you work with for 20 years because you don't want to go below that with this person. And that is totally okay. It's there's I was an accountant in my former life. I get it. Some of us don't dip below the surface, and that
Right.
is not a shot at anyone. We're all, like I said, we're all walking our own path.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that very much. And it is nice to hear that from a male perspective because, as you yourself said, sometimes, also not to lump all males, but yeah, it's true. Sometimes I think that is a little harder for males to do, to put
It
those
is.
emotions out there and just to be vulnerable. And I understand that. I think that shows a lot of growth when someone's able to do that. So thank you for sharing that. And
Oh, you're welcome.
if you, I will be sure to include in the show notes how anyone can reach out with Andrew. But I just wanted to ask before we close, is there any one last thing you would like to tell us anything maybe, I know in your podcast you guys sometimes share like your glimmers. In mine, I call it glimmers of hope since I'm the hope coach. But do you have
Yeah.
anything that you would like to share there to end the session?
Yeah, I have something that just kind of came to mind, and I love that because I do all my interviews just off the top of my head, and I love when stuff comes in because it's flowing naturally that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
I would say to the listeners, if something inside of you is resonating from this podcast, whether it's needing connection or vulnerability or the 60-second rule, you owe it to yourself to look into it a little more. And you don't have to, it's kind of like clothes shopping. You try stuff on. If it doesn't fit, you leave it in the store and you go find something else. But these things find you for a reason at the right time. And you might listen to this podcast 2 or 3 times over the next few months. Totally okay. I find that life is leading you down a road, and sometimes we have to pick up and stop looking at our feet and look at the signs that are right in our face to understand it. And Lord knows I missed those for a good 40 years. But if you are wondering what the next step is, if you're feeling like maybe you're stuck in your life, I would offer you to, send me an email, or me and Catherine at an email at hello@5yearyou.com. We work with people, we coach people to starting to find their purpose so that they can start living a life of purpose instead of by accident. And it's been my experience that so many of us, myself included, were living our lives kind of by accident because we didn't have an intentionality to it. So.
Yeah. Very good. Well, thank you so much today. It's been very enjoyable. It's been a great conversation, and I appreciate you being on the Hope Coach podcast. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.